Very good evening to all, and thank you very much for joining the session. Welcome to the second seminar in the seminar series organized by CTFP, Center for Technology, Foresight and Policy at IIT Jodhpur. And it is our pleasure to have today Chandana Tekkatte as our speaker. And Chandana is a science and technology specialist at the Good Food Institute India, GFI India, where she actively engages with the scientific communities in the Indian academia and industry to build and foster a robust alternative protein research and training ecosystem in India. Chandana comes with more than a decade of research and development experience in stem cell biology and bioengineering from reputed institutions such as the University of Sheffield and the University of California, San Diego. So at GFI India, Good Food Institute India, her unique scientific skills help advance India's smart protein R&D ecosystem by analyzing key knowledge gaps in the science behind cultivated meat and fermentation-derived proteins. So with that short introduction, let me welcome Chandana, and over to you, Chandana.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dr. Vinod. Pleasure to be a part of this series, and I'm very glad that we're part of this early on, and hopefully the interest generates some meaningful collaborations between our institutes. So I would like to start off by just for those who aren't familiar with the Good Food Institute, I would like to start by a brief introduction. So we are a part of a network of nonprofit organizations. We have partners in US, Brazil, Europe, Israel, and Asia Pacific. And we are hoping to establish a secure, sustainable, and just global food system. I noticed a lot of parallels between what we do and your center, CTFP. So I noticed that your strategy, your core ideology is about directed development of advanced technologies or emerging technologies. So I completely agree and acknowledge the need for more science and policy-based think tanks who can guide policymakers, industry, academic and scientific communities to really emerge in core sectors like emerging fields like alternative proteins or smart proteins. So I'll go more into how we function. So GFI India works across 4 key pillars. So we are a think tank that works in alternative proteins or smart proteins. And I'm from the science and technology team. So what our primary role is to work with research communities, active PhD scientists to make sure we better understand the science behind smart proteins. We also have a business team that works with corporates and startups and make sure they understand the opportunities that are upcoming in the field. And a major role for us is the policy that we do. So the science and policy team work very closely together to engage with policymakers like the Ministry of Science and Technology or Ministry of Food Processing Industries, FSSAI. So we work across policy and regulatory to make sure that the government is appropriately allocating public funds, public investment to make sure that we have no threats to food security or safety in India. So I keep saying alternative proteins, smart proteins, but what exactly is it? So why are we talking about smart proteins? So the challenge is we are growing. Our population is growing worldwide. We are expected to be about 10 billion in 2050. So the way we produce food right now is not the most sustainable or efficient, and definitely not safe. And I'm saying this, just looking back to how the world has experienced a pandemic just due to the lack of safety and regulations around food production. So the industrial animal and our reliance on animal proteins is still quite high. So the population is skyrocketing, and at the same time, we do need the same amount of animal protein in the next 30 years. So how do we make sure that we are able to, meet the nutritional demands of our growing population, and at the same time not kill the planet trying to do that? So it has to be an efficient, sustainable way of making food. And the reason is there is going to be a food gap. So even if we continue producing food the way we do, whether it's plants or animal protein, there will still be a projected food gap of 50%, 56%. And we really need to either reduce urbanization and change the demographics of the population, or we need to think of smarter ways to feed our population. So with that balance in mind, we think that if the way climate change is going to keep growing, animal agriculture will probably not be the solution to our food needs. And even if we are able to find solutions to better ways of animal agriculture, there will still not be enough land or water resources that we can tap into to do animal agriculture the way we are currently doing. So there is a lot of sustainability questions around the way we currently produce food, and it's not scalable. So given all this background, and of course, like I said, we are worried that if we keep growing the way we do and continue to unhygienically make food, we may actually have antibiotic resistance and a next pandemic from a zoonotic disease on our hands very soon. So we, keeping all these in mind, we need to be ready with a solution which is not going to kill the planet and still meet our food needs, our nutritional needs, and ensure food security for our population. So, given that animal agriculture and greenhouse gases is so closely linked, we can't really go around telling people to eat less meat. That system may not really work in the long term. People will continue to do what they want to do. It's just we need to give them alternatives which either have the same nutritional composition, taste the same, and cost the same or less. So unless we give them an alternative, they may not want to give up what they have. So we believe that alternative is smart protein. So globally, it's called alternative proteins, but in India, we like to use the word smart for a lot of things: smartphones, smart cities, smart way of doing things. And we believe this might be the smarter way to reduce our dependence on animal proteins. So as I said, we can't expect people to stop eating meat. So we need to substitute the consumption of meat with alternatives from various sources. This should be able to replicate the cultural experience, the sensory experience, and offer nutritional parity also. So, this is what we call smart proteins. And we believe this something that people want can either come from plant based sources. So, you may have come across companies in India. I'm going to talk about them more later. The one of the first in the world to start is called Impossible Burger. So they used plant proteins to make a beef patty, a beef-like patty, which became a huge hit amongst vegans and flexitarians. So we believe it can. These smart proteins can be plant-based meat, egg, and dairy substitutes can be made either from plant sources, or you can use fermentation technology to create more ingredients which can replicate meat and its sensory appeal. And the third one is cultivated meat. So this has been turning a lot of eyes in the last 2, 3 years, ever since they got commercialized. They're available to eat in Singapore, US, Israel. So cultivated meat is really the most emerging field of alternative proteins or smart proteins, because it's real meat that is made from taking a biopsy of cells or muscle cells or fat cells from a real animal, and you grow them at a cellular level in a bioreactor and make them and structure them into real real meat like muscle. So there are almost 70 something startups working on this. There are, like I said, some of the products have been commercialized, and uh, they have been regulated and approved for consumption. Singapore has been selling cultivated meat since 2020, and US has been selling it for the last 6 months or so. And my colleagues who have tasted this say it's you can't tell the difference. It's essentially the same as real meat, because it is real meat. Vegans and vegetarians will not be able to eat it because it's real animal cells. So yeah, broadly, this is what smart proteins are defined as. It can either come from plant sources or from fermentation technology, or you can grow the cells directly and make cultivated meat. And the reason why we are so enthusiastic about this is you're able to produce the same products by able and by meeting sustainable development goals outlined by the UN. And we also have conducted LCA analysis to really life cycle analysis to make sure that we are able to sustainably produce these with, in comparison to real meat. There are studies that GFI published last year, which you can have a look at. So I'm going to go quickly into each of these verticals. So plant-based products, as I said, you use plant sources like either from crops or from legumes and other types of other types of plant sources, crop sources. In India, millets are very popular. So millets are a very high protein source, um, climate resilient crop, climate change resilient crop. It's been ignored abroad, but in India, lots of companies here are using millets to make milk, dairy, milk, yogurt, and even meat products. So this is just an example of all the companies out there in India who are making plant-based smart protein products. You can buy them in stores or through Big Basket, Amazon, and it's available everywhere. And I recommend trying it at least once. It's very interesting what they do. And there are also value chain partners who are international companies who are entering the sector. So it's not just the small startups who are working on it, but even large ingredient and manufacturing companies are very much into making these products real. Like even Nestle and big FMCGs are entering the sector now because of the growing demand for different options that exciting options people are always looking for. And yeah, these are just some images of how these products are made and some of the most successful startups out there. So Imagine Meats, I think is owned by a celebrity couple. I'm trying to remember who. Yeah, Imagine Meats was Neeraj Chopra and Anushka. I think they were the big brand ambassadors. So it's really catching like that influencer attention in India, and we're hoping that this wave keeps going and more people try it out. And so FMCG players, like I said, ITC, Nestle are all entering the plant-based sector because I think there's also in India, there's a cultural twist that some days some people don't like to eat meat. So they think of plant-based alternatives as an interesting option that they can still eat because it's not really meat. It's made from a vegetarian source. So in India, there's that advantage for consumer acceptance that people are willing to try it at least on certain days, if not every day. So yeah, this is just a quick overview of how the plant-based sector works. And I'm going to jump into the next enabling technology. So fermentation is not where you're going to eat the product in itself. It's more of an enabling technology where you're able to create ingredients which can go into the final end product. And it's needless to say, we have known about this technology for millennia. We've always used traditional fermentation to be able to make our food nutritionally better, taste better, and so on. So we use fermentation to make growth factors for biotechnology. We also, if you've had cheese, most of the cheese that's made today is from a precision fermentation derived enzyme. Nobody gets enzymes for making cheese from cow intestines anymore. So fermentation derived ingredients are very prevalent in our food already. So it's such a powerful tool that you can make anything. You can make a coloring agent, you can make a flavor agent, you can make a better nutritionally enhanced vitamins and amino acids to fortify your food. So we believe this is where India's power lies, because we have a lot of fermentation capacity either in industrial or bioethanol, biorefineries, or pharma. And of course, there are startups also that are coming out in this sector. And India is quite high up in the list compared to Singapore or Australia, because we already have 5 or 6 startups in the space. And lots of media coverage is also seen here, because fermentation is what is going to help India's bioeconomy really grow. Because of the high demand for these proteins, for these novel proteins from fermentation, the biomanufacturing sector is really going to thrive. And the Indian government is also giving a lot of attention to this, and I'll come to this a little later in the presentation. So yeah, this is just a quick overview of what fermentation does. And now I'm going to jump into cultivated meat. So I think Dr. Vinod was saying this is one of the interesting things that even they are looking into. He has done an LCA on this. I'm very curious to learn about that more later. But yeah, this is cultivated meat is genuine animal meat, which can be made from a biopsy of cells and grown in bioreactors. So this has been done in chicken, pork, lots of fish, seafood species, shrimp, and so on. And in India, there are already 5 startups working on this. And you would be surprised there are only 4 in China, and we have more already. So India is really, really growing in this emerging tech already. And the government has also been consistently investing in this technology. Either the DBT or DST has funded programs to develop cell lines in cultivated meat over the last few years. And the policy landscape overall in the alternative protein sector, in the smart protein sector, has also evolved a lot over the years. So just to give a quick few examples of how it's been going, they have really, all these countries, this is just a very small snippet, by the way, a few examples of how all countries that are economically high up there have prioritized alternative proteins or smart proteins as one of the key needs for their country to grow, either economically or to ensure they diversify protein supplies. Like China has said it, USA has said it, UK, they are all pumping in huge amounts of money to make sure that they have a plan B for food and protein production in the future. And this can be a little depressing that private investment in other countries has been huge. And in India, we are still lacking in scale, but it's getting there. Given that the number of startups are growing, and now since the government is also beginning, the Indian government is also beginning to realize the potential of biomanufacturing and alternative proteins, this is expected to grow. And as I said, we believe GFI India as a think tank has shown that smart proteins will fit well within our national priorities. Number one, to grow our bioeconomy, because that is one of the key things we want as a country to grow economically. And this is a huge opportunity at every level. And we have the capability to be, we are already a very food secure nation, but we're also rapidly growing in population. So we need to have a self-reliance when it comes to food in the long run. And we believe this really fits well even with our climate goals if we look into sustainable food production. And in 2020, the Prime Minister announced the Mission Lifestyle for Environment program, Mission Life. So once more, this smart protein technology fits very well into this broader mission of ensuring that we live a lifestyle of sustainability and for the environment. So given all this, I think it's well understood that smart proteins can fit well in our national agenda and help in building the sector in an Atmanirbhar Bharat way. Because most countries envy that we have a huge talent pool which can help grow the sector like faster than what other countries can achieve. And we have a lot of crop biodiversity which we can tap into for making novel food products. And of course there's a huge industrial opportunity to grow our bioeconomy. And given all this, over the last 4 years, that 5 years that we've been active, we work closely with the to build a roadmap to make sure the sector grows. And we work with a lot of universities, a lot of talent development agencies, and mainly the various ministries through our policy department. So we have managed to have a set agenda with each of these ministries. And I can go a little more into what that is in. Sorry about that. Yeah. So given our work in the last 5 years, we have managed to speak to these ministries. And what's really exciting is that people have been the latest secretary of each of these DBT, DST has been very acknowledging of the potential for smart protein and the need to increase more research. And they have been consistently announcing funding opportunities with smart protein as one of the key thrust areas. And I think in the most landmark initiative is the announcement of the biomanufacturing program. So this is where the Department of Biotechnology has conceptualized an initiative called as high performance biomanufacturing. So this is part of our country's goal to grow the bioeconomy to 300 billion by 2030. So as part of this, they want to foster more innovation and scale up and infrastructure for developing alternative proteins. And as part of this biomanufacturing, they have made smart protein as one of the key domains where this biomanufacturing can be scaled, and the products that we make can be exported in a way that we build a circular economy. Because like I said, it's all about the lifestyle for the environment. So the government has been very insistent on ensuring we grow the bioeconomy, but not at the cost of the environment. And luckily, the alternative protein technologies that I just mentioned to you fall well within the circular bioeconomy concept, where it's clean, green, and makes sure we are a prosperous India. So just last week, the DBT released this brief about the policy framework that they're going to announce on biomanufacturing soon. And during the interim budget, they did allocate money for this biomanufacturing initiative. As I said, they have started allocating funds for the smart protein sector, where they're trying to set up biofoundries in various parts of India to make sure that they have the right infrastructure and we don't lag behind, because we are kind of 4 to 5 years behind the R&D and innovation curve compared to the global north. So we're hoping that India will build the global south model for excelling in biomanufacturing and alternative proteins and synthetic biology. So yeah, so this is where we are right now with the policy. DBT and the Ministry of Science and Technology has finally embraced the importance of biomanufacturing and alternative proteins as one of the key thrust areas which can ensure the growth of the sector and the growth of our bioeconomy. So with that, I think I'm going to draw a parallel to why we need to keep establishing alternative proteins or smart proteins as a key area, because this is where the renewable energy industry was 30 years ago. And even today, they pump in trillions of dollars to make sure the energy industry sector grows. So we are at a similar stage, and we still have another 20, 30 years to go. So even if there aren't that many success stories as renewable energy had 20, 30 years ago, I don't think this is the time to stop pumping in public investment, and I'm glad the government of India has also recognized that. So they are continuing to recognize this as a very crucial sector for us to grow in. It's as impactful, profitable, and scalable as renewable energy, and I'm glad that we are, as a country, heading in that direction. So in the end, I'm just gonna end by saying how we can help. So as I said, we are a think tank that has scientists, we have lawyers, we have regulatory experts, and we have corporate engagement specialists. So all of these come together in making sure we pump into every part of the value chain to make sure the sector of alternative proteins or smart proteins is really out there and reaches maturity. So if depending on which part of this flywheel you want help in, please feel free to reach out to us. And as I said, we do function across other countries also. So we have affiliates in America, Europe, Brazil, Israel, and Asia Pacific. So we are there to help you in any way we can. And yeah, thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chandana. That was quite insightful. I think there is a lot that needs to be done in the domain of sustainable food system, right? So yeah. So if the audience has any questions, please.
Yeah, can I go ahead? One
Yes,
question.
Professor Venkatesh. Yes, please.
See, when you say plant-based meat, that means what are you defining meat as?
So, plant ingredients are usually texturized in a way that it can feel like meat sensorially.
Means is it?
They make sure, and they're of course fortified with the necessary ingredients to make sure they are comparable to meat in its form.
No, it's very difficult to. I'm trying to suppose if there is a blood, does it create blood?
So there is something called as leg hemoglobin, which is what gives the bloody flavor in meat. So this is usually produced through fermentation technology and incorporated in in plant-based products to make sure it tastes like meat, it's bloody, and it has that umami flavor. So this is what I meant, that these technologies work with each other to make sure they make an end product which is exactly tasting like meat, smelling like meat, cooks like meat, and so on.
No, I still have not understood how this will help the green part of it. I'm not able to relate that to your green thing because you are not using animals and you say you need plant and how it is going to help in the
So right now, how the animal agriculture industry works is you take 1 calorie, feed it to you take 9 calories, feed it to a chicken, and then that chicken only gives you 1 calorie in the end. So essentially, you're wasting um, the cycle, caloric cycle, by feeding it to a chicken and then slaughtering it just to get 1 calorie out. But rather, we can use those 9 calories of plant protein as is to convert it into a meat like product. So that is where the sustainability and efficiency comes in. You are converting animal feed directly for human consumption, because trust me, animal feed is one of the biggest drains of our crop resources. Most of the what can be used for human consumption goes into animal feed, and the food that you get from animals is only a fraction of it, because you're growing the entire organism just to get a gram or two of muscle tissue, and everything else is just dumped.
okay, one last question. This is just a curiosity. This type of meat, if you feed it to the meat eating animals, do they eat it or they don't eat it?
Well, I mentioned 3 different types of sources of meat. So which meat are you talking about?
Plant-based meat fed to a meat-eating animal, does it take it or it doesn't take it? I'm just curious. I'm just because it is like
That's a great question. But I'm sure if you give them cultivated meat, they will eat it because it's real meat. I don't think anybody has tried to give meat eating animals plant based meat, but I do know that there are companies which are replacing pet food like dog food with plant derived and fermentation derived sources. So if animals like dogs are eating it, I'm sure they are enjoying the taste.
I can eat vegetarian food also. I'm not.
Yeah,
I,
but it's made to taste
that is a
like
question.
meat for
Just
them.
curiosity. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm done.
Yeah. So any other questions? So I have a question, right? So you're making parallel with this sustainable energy transition. When you're talking about sustainable food transition, right? So in the energy transition, perhaps the market adoption of sustainable energy technologies like electric vehicles, as you had said, was happening mostly based on the availability of technology and the cost factor, right? But when you look at, say, cultivated meat or alternate proteins as such, so to also take into account taste as a factor, right? And taste match has to happen. So how do you look at it, or what are your thoughts on that?
So, so you're saying with energy, there was just the cost that need to be met. The cost parity had to be met, but here there's also like a cultural and sensorial experience that needs to be
Yes,
compared.
yes, social.
Yeah, so that is why there is so much innovation that is very crucial here to create such hybrid products where you can't just take cells from a bioreactor and call it food. There needs to be matrices that we can grow on. And right now, uh, as I'm a tissue engineer by background, we have access to a lot of different types of scaffolds that's used to make organs. So organ replacements is a huge industry right now, and so there is a lot of R&D already happening in trying to um, make something that is three dimensionally like tissue, like tissue, animal tissue. So the reason with food is to bring the taste parity. They are trying to use decellularized plant matrices or mycelial matrices like from mushrooms because they already have an umami flavor, like a meaty flavor and texture. It's fibrous like meat. So the idea to bring that replication of real meat and nutrition is to grow these cells on these kinds of matrices, which will be able to meet the taste requirement, which is very important for food also. So there is a lot of innovation already happening in this, and of course, it's important to find these kinds of alternatives which are still sustainable, which is why they're looking at hemp type sources, discarded agri waste side streams, which can eventually be plugged into the food supply chain and try to meet both taste and nutritional and fiber parity. So yeah, so that's why we need more innovation to, since you're not just trying to bring down the price and the cost of cultivated meat, but also the taste. And we're hoping like how we're able to make flavors and fragrances from precision fermentation. We can find isolate that particular flavor molecule which gives that searing meat flavor and incorporate that into cultivated meat, so you're able to, yeah, mass spectrometry is very much an exploitative technology here because they're able to isolate these compounds and characterize them and then include it in food. And India is leading in that because we we have the tech, we have the capability, and we know how to scale things up at cost. So hopefully we get the taste and price parity through India's biomanufacturing capabilities.
Sure, thanks. So basically, I think that social acceptance is what is going to play a bigger role, right, when we talk about alternative proteins.
Yeah. Consumer acceptance is one of the big things, especially in the West. Things haven't been going very well in Europe, for example. There's been a lot of lobbying against it without truly understanding the science behind it, which is why think tanks like us, we are helping the government and policymakers understand that this is a safe technology, a safe, scalable technology with no microbial hazards or clinical threats to consumption, to human consumption. In fact, most of the threats come from the way factory farms are maintained and how they are pumped with antibiotics. And I know one of the researchers in from IIT Bombay, I think. So he quit what his regular science was and shifted to look into alternative proteins because he used to work in the aqua feed industry, and apparently they would have shrimp drums and they won't add any measured form of antibiotic. They would pour drums of antibiotics to into this food that people are eventually going to eat. So he was saying how scientists themselves don't seem to understand the threats of the way we are farming animals and seafood right now. So he thought, okay, it's about time, we start shifting focus to how we can change the way we are currently doing things. So um, I can share the details. I'm not able to recall his department, but he is one of the examples that we quote for how scientists really need to take it seriously. Even if you're mid-career, late career, think of the seriousness of the future of our food systems and think of how we can change it.
Right. So any other questions?
I can share my email and please feel free to write to me if anything comes up.
Definitely. So if there are no more questions, let us thank Chandana for that insightful webinar, and we'll definitely stay connected.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Please
for-
do. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
thank you.